The studio lights, once just a source of illumination, now felt like a spotlight on a gladiatorial arena. The air, thick with the scent of coffee and ozone, crackled with an energy that felt different. This wasn't just another Tuesday. This was the day the quiet veneer of political decorum would be shattered. Before we dive into the heart of the storm, if you're ready to witness a clash that will redefine political discourse, make sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell to stay on top of every moment of this incredible face-off. We're about to explore a debate that wasn't just a debate. It was a cultural flashpoint. Now, let's get into it. The polished oak of the round table, a familiar centerpiece of the nationally syndicated political panel show, felt unnaturally still. The silence was heavy, a prelude to the seismic event that was about to unfold. Karoline Leavitt sat tall and composed, her blue blazer a crisp, professional shield against the encroaching tension. Her expression was a perfectly calibrated mask, unreadable, but with a hint of coiled readiness in her posture. She was a former White House press secretary, a veteran of media battles, but today she was in a different kind of war room. Across from her, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett adjusted her mic with the casual confidence of someone for whom the spotlight was a second home. She thumbed through her notes, her movements precise, her smile a steady beacon of self-assurance. A rising star in her party, she represented a new generation of political fire, unafraid to speak truth to power. She was prepared for a debate, but she was about to get a fight. The moderator, a seasoned professional whose voice was a masterclass in neutrality, began the introduction. His words, a familiar cadence of political formality, were the last calm notes before the storm. Tonight, a special conversation about race, responsibility, and rhetoric in Washington. Joining us, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and former White House press secretary Karoline Leavitt. The camera cut to a split screen, and for a moment, the two women stared at each other through the lens, separated by a million miles of political ideology and a few feet of studio floor. Viewers across the country leaned forward, sensing that something was different about this broadcast. "Let's begin with this," the moderator said, his voice a steady hand on a trembling wheel. "Congresswoman Crockett, last week you made headlines suggesting certain conservative voices are, quote, performers pretending to care about real America. What did you mean?" Jasmine barely hesitated. "I meant what I said. There are people out here wearing patriotism like a costume while ignoring the pain of real communities, especially communities of color." Her voice was calm, but laced with conviction. She was delivering a message she had practiced, one her base knew well. The camera panned to Karoline, who didn't move. She listened, her expression still unreadable, a slight, almost imperceptible smirk playing at the corner of her mouth. The moderator turned to her. "Karoline." She smiled tightly, a gesture that didn't reach her eyes. "I think it's hilarious that a career politician from a gated district is lecturing anyone on what real America feels." That was the first shot, not a stray bullet, but a direct, targeted hit. Jasmine scoffed, her voice sharp with surprise. "Excuse me?" The studio tensed. The air had officially changed. The polite panel was over. The battle had just begun.
The polite exchange was over. Jasmine's "excuse me" hung in the air, a verbal gauntlet thrown down on the polished studio floor. Leavitt leaned in slightly, a subtle shift in posture that conveyed a dangerous intimacy. Her voice, once cool and composed, dropped in temperature, becoming sharp, precise, and cutting. "No, really, you sit in Congress, protected by metal detectors and handlers, and you've got the nerve to say, 'I don't care about Americans because I talk about border security?' That's embarrassing." The studio lights seemed to grow hotter. The tension, which had been a low hum, snapped into a deafening silence. Jasmine's smile, a fixture of her political persona, hardened into a grim line. "It's embarrassing that you think yelling about immigrants makes you a patriot." "I didn't yell," Karoline replied sharply, her words like tiny, cold daggers. And I'm not the one turning every disagreement into a race issue to dodge accountability. The moderator, a deer in the headlights of a political collision, tried to intervene. "Ladies, can we—" But his words were lost. Jasmine turned to face Karoline fully, her entire body language now a challenge. "You don't know anything about what it means to live as a minority in this country." Karoline didn't flinch. Her composure was not a sign of calm, but a calculated stillness. "I know what it means to be silenced for saying uncomfortable truths, like how your party uses race as a weapon while failing the very communities you claim to represent." A low murmur rippled through the audience behind the cameras, a collective gasp from people who had never expected this level of raw, unscripted combat. And then came the line, the one that would be clipped, shared, and replayed millions of times, the one that would launch 1,000 memes and ignite a firestorm. It was delivered with zero hesitation, loud and clear across the table. "Sit down, Jasmine. You're embarrassing yourself." A collective gasp from the studio floor. A few clapped, others shouted back in outrage. But Jasmine Crockett didn't blink. Her expression shifted, less amused, more dangerous. "You just picked the wrong fight," she said, her voice low and full of venom. Karoline smiled, a genuine, confident smirk that finally reached her eyes. "No, Jasmine, I picked the right one, finally." Jasmine's eyes narrowed, the kind of stare that didn't just challenge, it warned. Her mic caught the crisp exhale from her nose, the audible silence before a storm. "I'm embarrassing myself?" she repeated, slow and deliberate. "You sit here parroting every MAGA talking point like a press release and have the nerve to talk down to me?" Karoline leaned back, unfazed. "I'm talking up to the truth. It's above you right now." The moderator, now visibly tense, cut in again, but it was too late. The dam had broken. Jasmine's voice sharpened, her tone icy. "You've never passed a bill, Karoline. You've never served a district, walked through neighborhoods destroyed by policy failures. All you've done is sit behind a podium and spin stories for a president who lost the popular vote twice." The battle lines were drawn. The political punditry was over. It was now a fight for survival, broadcast live to a nation on the brink.
The moderator, a man whose career was built on the smooth, quiet glide of political discourse, finally cut to a commercial. But the moment the red light on the camera blinked off, the chaos began. Producers rushed onto the set, their frantic whispers into earpieces drowned out by the low-level buzzing of 100 different crises. Security guards edged closer, their eyes darting between the two women who were now breathing hard across the table from each other. They were no longer political pundits. They were prize fighters at the bell, and the fight wasn't over. The break was a fiction. The show was still going, not on television, but on 1,000 different screens across the country. Hashtags like Karoline versus Jasmine and Sit Down Showdown trended within minutes. The phrase, "You're embarrassing yourself," was clipped, captioned, and posted before the first commercial could even finish. The internet, a ravenous beast hungry for spectacle, had found its meal. Back in the studio, the broadcast returned from break not with music or a smiling host, but with a palpable, stomach-churning tension. The moderator, now visibly rattled, tried to reframe the conversation. "Let's pivot briefly. Representative Crockett, do you believe the rhetoric we're seeing in politics today is escalating division in America?" He was trying to put the genie back in the bottle, but the genie had already set the studio on fire. Jasmine didn't even look at him. She looked directly into the camera, bypassing the moderator entirely. What's dividing America is people who wrap ignorance in patriotism and called it leadership. Karoline chuckled under her breath, a sound that cut clean through the room. "Is something funny?" Jasmine snapped, her head whipping toward her opponent. "Just the irony," Karoline replied, her voice firm and unwavering. "You accuse others of ignorance while reciting every DNC buzzword like it's gospel." The audience, once a quiet backdrop,
was now a live crowd, a mix of murmurs, cheers, and boos. The studio was split, much like the country. The rest of the show was less a debate and more a relentless exchange of political grenades. "People like you are dangerous," Karoline said, leaning forward. "You fuel fear. You normalize cruelty. I normalize truth, and what you call fear is often just reality you don't want to face." The final moments were a crescendo of fury. "You represent a seat," Karoline declared, standing up. "I represent the millions who are tired of politicians using pain as political currency." The chaos in the audience was complete, forcing the control room to cut the mic feeds. The show officially ended, but the storm had just begun. Outside the studio, protesters and supporters had already gathered, their signs and slogans mirroring the vitriol inside. News vans lined the street. This wasn't a viral moment. It was a cultural flashpoint. The moment was immortalized, already screen-recorded, clipped, and uploaded by hundreds of viewers. It was no longer a political panel. It was a battle for the soul of America, and the whole country was now a battlefield. As the studio lights died, the storm was just beginning. Outside, the scene was electric. Protesters and supporters had begun to gather, their signs and chants a real-world echo of the digital firestorm. News vans, sensing a major cultural event, lined the street. Meanwhile, in a quiet office in D.C., Jasmine Crockett scrolled through the reactions in silence. Her phone buzzed with a torrent of notifications. She was a political figure, but she had become a trending topic, a living meme, a lightning rod. Her staff surrounded her, a whirlwind of panicked energy. "We need to control this," her aide insisted. "The clips are everywhere." Jasmine looked up, her jaw tight. "I don't care," she said flatly. "Let them clip it. Let them see what happens when someone like me doesn't back down." She wasn't just reacting. She was calculating. This wasn't a loss. It was an opportunity. She made a call. "Push the Crockett Town Hall announcement. I'm going live this Friday. No scripts, no handlers, just me." Her aide's hesitation was palpable. "That's risky." Jasmine's reply was chillingly calm. So was letting her define me. Across town in a hotel suite in Arizona, Karoline Leavitt was also watching the fallout, but with a faint, knowing smirk. Her phone was a non-stop vibrator of victory, but she muted it. She knew the game. This wasn't about winning one debate. It was about shaping the narrative. When her press aide entered the laptop, the headlines confirmed her instincts. Standoff of generational voices. AOC versus the GOP, but even meaner. Karoline simply smirked. "Let 'em talk. The more they talk, the more I win." Friday night arrived, and the air outside the Crockett Town Hall felt like a campaign rally 6 months early. A long line of supporters, holding signs like "Jasmine Fights Back" and "Truth Over Talk," snaked around the auditorium. Inside, Jasmine paced the stage, a single mic in her hand. Her staff had begged her to tone it down, to stick to policy. She ignored every one of their pleas. When the broadcast went live, she stared straight into the camera, her voice a low rumble of defiance. "A few minutes ago, I was called embarrassing. I was told to sit down. I was told that my leadership wasn't real. Well, here's my answer. I don't need your approval to stand tall. I was elected by the people, not appointed by a political cult." The crowd erupted. Meanwhile, in her hotel suite, Karoline was watching the fallout with a faint, knowing smirk. Her phone was a non-stop vibrator of victory, but she muted it. She knew the game. This wasn't about winning one debate. It was about shaping the narrative. When her press aide entered with a laptop, the headlines confirmed her instincts. Standoff of generational voices. AOC versus the GOP, but even meaner. Karoline simply smirked. "Let 'em talk. The more they talk, the more I win." Jasmine delivered the final blow. Karoline Leavitt wants to be the voice of truth. Fine. Then let's put the truth on stage and debate it anytime, anywhere. Let the people decide what real leadership looks like. The challenge was out. Public, raw, and impossible to ignore. Karoline, watching the screen, leaned forward, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. Her fingers moved fast on her phone. She opened X. Let's go. Name the time. You won't win the second round either. #United States. The tweet exploded. The rematch was on. The lights hit the stage like a thunderclap. This was not a television studio. It was a coliseum. Two podiums stood stark and separate, a physical representation of the chasm between them. Karoline Leavitt stood to the right, her posture an expression of unyielding confidence. Jasmine Crockett was to the left, her eyes steady, her expression unreadable. The audience, a mix of supporters, pundits, and the simply curious, did not cheer. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was something heavier, a cultural event. The moderator, a neutral figure carefully chosen to preside over this ideological clash, welcomed the viewers, but nobody was listening. Everyone was waiting for the first shot to be fired. It didn't take long. Miss Leavitt, what would you say to critics who believe your rhetoric encourages division rather than dialogue? Karoline didn't blink. I say they're afraid of a truth that doesn't come with a trigger warning. Division didn't start with me. I just refuse to pretend unity exists when policies are destroying this country. A roar erupted from the right side of the audience. Jasmine's smirk was subtle, but sharp. Representative Crockett, your response. Jasmine steps forward, abandoning her podium. Unity requires honesty, but it also requires heart. Karoline delivers sound bites with bite, but the people she claims to speak for, they're not pawns, they're real, and they're tired of being used as fuel for someone else's flame. This time, the crowd erupted louder. The moderator tried to interject, but it was useless. The two women had found their rhythm, an electrifying dance of accusation and counterpunch. You want to talk heart? Karoline challenged. Then explain the heartbreak in cities destroyed by your party's policies. You want to talk cities? Jasmine shot back. Let's talk about rural towns with no hospitals, schools closing, and people dying from despair while you chase headlines. The back and forth was a masterclass in political combat. I chase accountability, Karoline said, her voice dropping a register. You chase applause. Jasmine stepped forward, calm but commanding. I chase justice. You chase clout. The moment hung in the air, a collision of two storm fronts. The moderator had long since stepped back, hands off his earpiece. He knew what everyone watching already knew. This wasn't a debate. It was a reckoning. It was a battle for who gets to define the American story. In their final moments, they were asked for their final words. Karoline turned to the camera, her eyes unblinking. That I never backed down. Not when it was easy, not when it was hard. I spoke what needed to be said, and I'll keep doing it no matter the cost. Jasmine, quieter now, but just as firm, followed. That power without purpose is hollow. That fire without wisdom burns everything. I'm not here to be loud. I'm here to lead. The lights dimmed. The nation was forced to listen, to choose, and to reckon with the two competing realities presented on the stage. Thank you for watching this gripping showdown between Karoline Leavitt and Jasmine Crockett, a clash that exposed not just political divides, but the raw pulse of a nation torn between two visions of leadership. One stood for unapologetic confrontation, the other stood for unshaken resolve. In the end, it wasn't about who yelled louder. It was about who connected deeper. Politics isn't just policy. It's passion, belief, and the courage to speak when silence is safer. Whether you stand with Karoline's fire or Jasmine's defiance, one truth is undeniable. America is listening and choosing. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful face-offs that push boundaries and spark conversations. Until next time, stay aware, stay bold, and never stop questioning the narrative.